to it. So the other policy pieces that we also discuss is at the Tulsa Food Security Council. And I don't know if everyone in the room are even aware that there is a Tulsa Food Security Council. It meets the last Monday of the month. It meets at the Indian Healthcare Resource Center, and it meets at 11:30. We used to sometimes, the food bank would host and join with us too. And so one of the things that we are putting together, if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and announce the food summit that I would like to invite you all to on October 29th. And we are addressing from the field to the plate, all of the 5 sectors, from production to processing to distribution to consumption, the consumers, and the food waste recovery that Demelda was talking about, and what we can do as a city and as a community to be able to make improvements to create a healthier community. And so one of the things that we're also working with, called the Tulsa County Wellness Partnership, is to be able to ask our city leaders to create a healthy eating and active living resolution. And so we're asking the city to take a look at some of the production, the distribution, and to create possible incentives to be able to assist, because we need to support our local farmers in the production of our real food, not our processed foods, but of our real food, the nutritional food, the real food that makes a difference. And so currently there are none. Other cities such as Seattle and San Francisco, they're able to ask the municipalities and the institutions such as the universities to amend their food service contract to purchase at least 5% local when it is seasonal and available. And so that is a possibility of a conversation that we would like to approach to. Other policy pieces are land use. Schools and parks, by right, you can grow community gardens in, but then other covenants, such as neighborhoods, they have restrictions. You can't sell vegetables if you would like to be able to have a market of the community gardens there. So there's improvements, room for improvement on that as well. I think that's the 5 food sectors. I think that's a few of the policy pieces that and I would open it up for additional questions from even the panel.
So go ahead.
Rita, you mentioned the healthy community portion through the Tulsa County Wellness Partnership. Do you know anything about what Sand Springs has done? I've just heard little bits and pieces that they've adopted.
Well, they are working on a comprehensive plan, is what they are currently doing. But they are also looking, the Tulsa County Wellness Partnership actually are looking at the workplace, which is like Hilti, and they're starting to look at vending machines and see the choices in the vending machines. That's one of the places. We're also looking at schools, and there's Farm to School that a lot of the schools could be participating in, and Union purchased $40,000 of local produce this past year. They could, but that is so small compared to what they could be doing.
New legislation through this new administration, because before that, the board that I served on, Community Food Security Coalition, we were the ones that proposed that, all of that in the farm bill, and this farm to college, farm to hospital. It's kind of like a lot of different entities, but also in this new administration, in the farm bill, they have included school gardens as one. The goal was to get to be able to have legislation where there's a garden in every school. And so that's one of the more promising things to come.
Because we've discovered that, yes, we can have these farmers markets and even the smaller farmers market where the eggplants and the bell peppers and the squashes are there for sale, but if you don't know how to prepare them, and that is another piece in that Tulsa County, and a lot of, County is challenging to be able to do food tastes at the farmer's market, but if you don't know what it tastes like, the chances are less that you're going to just purchase it, especially as money is tight. You can't purchase just to explore. So we are now understanding that the education piece is huge. And we're also recognizing too, that with the children, that the education and to grow the garden, that we are more successful whenever they grow it. Then they're so much more interested in exploring to taste of it and trying it. So we are doing projects and trainings where out in the northeastern Oklahoma with Cherokee Nation, we're working with 14 school districts, and we're inviting the farmers in to meet the school service directors. And it's really fun for them to meet the farmer who live locally, that they are able to bring their watermelons and their tomatoes in and build that trust, which makes it really fresh for them to be able to do this. And so we're hopeful that we can grow and expand this, but it is the education. And one of the most fun things, we did a veggie boat too, where you take a bell pepper and they ranched it from scratch with those herbs that aren't allowed with the WIC purchases, and carrots and bell small tomatoes, and just the presentation alone enticed the children to want to try that. And so
one of the other things I wanted to mention was a little bit about food waste too. I remember we had this big storm and I ripped part of my roof off, but the power went out on the 41st and Peoria area. So those stores that sell a lot of organic and Whole Foods was there. I mean, I called all of the agencies that I was attached to and tried to get Whole Foods to let them retrieve that food. And then Clinton passed this food donation act. If you donate the food, then they're relieved of liability. But Whole Foods refused to let any of these organizations that have pantries that are ready to go to be able to get that food. So a friend of mine and ours, I'm like, never been dumpster diving in my life. But we were out there. It was like so much cheese. Like some of the cheese is like $26 a pound. I'm like, I'm gonna go down on this cheese. But it was just so interesting that, I mean, it was so hurtful to see that much food just thrown away.
did they say why?
That they are still afraid of being sued.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, because they have a generator, and so the food was still chilled, you know, and it wasn't, you know, gone bad or anything yet. But they threw, I mean, just vegetables, everything, frozen food, everything. Like the whole store was just thrown away.
Our food waste is horrible. About
It
10 years
is.
ago, I volunteered at the PGA tournament when it was in town, and one of the tents there preparing food, it was the Texaco tent actually, because I was a TCC student at the time. And I mean, crab cakes and awesome food, and at the end of the night, the supervisor says all food, leftover food has to go in the trash. And I said, what are you talking about in the trash? And he was like, it all has to go in the trash.
It's supposed to
And I
be
said, I've got a
mindful
backpack,
of
I've got
all,
4
you
kids
know,
at home, I'm
of
taking
certain
stuff
communities.
that
You know, I think, you know, part of it is that we're not holding them to a standard and saying, you know, oh, I love Whole Foods and all that, but I'm gonna hold you to that standard that you say that you're about. You know, if you're about working with
Reduction of
communities and healthy communities and those kinds of things, then, and they're supposed to be environmental stewards and all of that. You know, I'm gonna hold you to that, because I know you just don't.
I want to
Your
be
whole
devil's
store.
advocate for a minute, because I was in North Carolina to go see my daughter in a very well-known store under the Good Samaritan food donation, did something, and somebody raised bloody hell. I was there for 3 days, and I saw the woman on TV probably 72 times. I watched way too much TV, but I was so interested in it because of what I do. And this store, it was like, you know, they were interviewing the store manager. He's like, but under the good, you know, we think the food was fine, and we kept it at temperature, and we were trying to reduce waste, and we were a big community partner. Nobody listened. I mean, this woman had a bully pulpit the whole time. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's easy to sit here in this room and say they should be giving it away, till they're being vilified on TV for doing just that. And they had a lot of
For
really,
giving it away?
for giving it away, and they're very politically correct. It was in Chapel Hill, very PC audience, and man, they were on there. Can you believe it's just more screwing the poor people? They're making them sick with this food, and you're like, so I mean, it can go south really fast. And I'm just saying, it's not as simple as it
Okay.
sounds sitting here.
Okay, well, let me make a point about that. I think food that's donated to you all is not all that safe either, because a lot of time it's food that
Believe
nobody
me.
wants.
I
You know,
totally
so,
understand
and
that.
organizations take that food in, and one of the main issues is where you get your food from too. So, but one of the things, and not you personally, I'm talking about your organization.
I know, I didn't think you were following me.
I mean, but we're talking about giving it to pantries that service low-income communities.
No, I
We're not
get
talking
it.
about giving it to individuals. We're talking about giving it to an organization that is gonna take the risk themselves. So you're relieved of that risk. We can look at every excuse not to do it. What do when they need to do it? That was entirely too much food. We're talking about eggs, everything that could have went into these pantries. I mean, Neighbor for Neighbor, I'm on their board. I called Ann, and Ann and Diane and them were right there. And they could not convince them to
No,
donate.
I argue with grocers all the time on donating, but I'm just saying, I did see that experience, and I'm not saying that they're right, I'm just saying that I saw the other side of it, and it's not pretty.
That just kind of reminds me, real quick, I like to say about, I went on YouTube and saw where people during the flooding earlier up in the year, up in New York and, you know, up in the northeast there, New Jersey and all that. I mean, there were people dumpster diving for food that never ever thought they would find themselves in that position. And that reminds me too, when I lived in Atlanta, and the city did not pay their, what was the name of the city where I was living at the time? They didn't pay their water bill, and we were without water, I think for about 5 or 6 days, and you do things that you normally wouldn't think you do. Like, I remember taking my tubs out to the pool and bringing water in so I could, you know, take a bath and things of that nature. And we had what do you call people from the Army that they send in, the
National Guard.
The National Guard to come in, and it was a mess. I mean, for 5 or 6 days, we weren't sure how we were going to manage with water on our own personal properties, and so you do resort to whatever you need to, but I agree, we need to try to hold some of these, we just need to start with the government and find a way to hold them to a standard where we can make sure that the waste is not so great.
Yeah, because one thing is, we're not talking about Save a Lot, who doesn't say that they stand for anything other than, you know, making
Right.
money. But I'm talking about an organization that say that you stand for something out of the ordinary than other places. And that's the way people look at you, you know. So I think you need to be held accountable to what you say you stand for.
And then let me say this on a personal note. I have started, back in July, I started on a plant-based diet. It's pretty much a raw diet, you know, raw foods and vegetables and what have you, fruits and vegetables. And it's very nutritionally dense. I fill up so easily on that. I don't spend a lot of money to eat that way either, contrary to what people think. I spend less money eating that way.
We do that
And you get
comparison
to-
when we talk about the cereals and
Yeah.
stuff, when they get mad that they can't get the sugar smacks. I mean, all of
Yeah.
us can think of a time you could sit down and eat 5 bowls of a sugary cereal, but try to eat 5 bowls of a high fiber cereal, it's just not gonna happen. I mean, you're gonna fill up pretty
You
fast.
fill up quick. I was 113, 12, 13 pounds, depending on whose scale you were on in the hospital or at my house when I left the hospital at the end of May from 2 surgeries. And when I started eating, I didn't put on any weight in June because I was eating a typical diet. And then in July, and I just looked at this on the calendar where I was, marking everything, plus the doctors got their records too. And in July, when I changed to a plant-based diet, I started putting on weight every week, I'm about 135, 136 pounds now. So I was putting on average 3-4 pounds a week. And I've had to cut back. I started cutting back here in the last 2 months because I started putting that weight on so quickly. And I thought just eating that weight that I wouldn't put on weight. Instead, it was just the opposite. I put on weight and I eat all day like that. And I take my food to the hospital for my chemo treatments every 3 weeks. Like next week, I'll take my bags of produce and everything with me. And I make my own vegetables and cut up everything when I'm up there. I go into I've got a refrigerator where I stuff all my things. But when you start eating that way, your palate changes, your taste for everything, and you can't eat hospital food, let alone anything from a You can't. I like to, I couldn't, you really get to a point where you cannot eat anything other than pretty much fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables. It's hard to eat almost anything else because you start desiring that taste. You make your own salad dressings too and all the good stuff. I encourage everybody to try it. You can save yourself a lot of money and probably restore your health as well, which I'm doing right now.
I did notice in Seattle that is Meals on Wheels part of y'all's program?
Yep.
Okay. One of the policy pieces that they were able to create is how we have Meals on Wheels, and for shut-in seniors, they developed a bag of vegetables like Meals on Wheels for shut-in seniors. And I thought, I like that.
We've actually offered Produce Store Meals on Wheels here to do that.
You
With-
have,
we
you have offered?
We have offered them.
And was it successful?
We have not done it yet, but it is an offer on the table.
Oh, it's an offer on the table?
Yeah, it's an offer on the table, yeah. Because, and it wouldn't be, we're not gonna have great stuff 12 months a year, but we've got staples 12 months a year, and then we have really good stuff for about 6 months a year. So that's an offer on the table. Because they've got the infrastructure in place, they're getting there and they're doing it. I don't know if you realize that Meals on Wheels here takes pet food, which I thought was pretty remarkable, because they found that the seniors were giving their meals to their pets, and they know that the social benefit of having a pet. So then they had the unintended consequence of having to limit the pet food because then people started adopting all the pets in the neighborhood when they so now it's but I thought that was a great, really insightful thing that they did and pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I think we're almost out of time, Michael. I don't have
we
more.
got 20 minutes.
Oh, okay, so we got a little bit of time. So I have a question, and you may not have an answer for me right now, but you can contact me later. But last year, I had some students come to me and say that they wanted to create a community garden at our campus at 41st and Yale. And we thought it was a good idea, and I talked to some of the campus administrators, and they thought it was a good idea. And then we tried to operationalize it, and it all fell apart, right? But it sort of brought up some larger sustainability issues with our campus. So I decided to undertake a campus sustainability plan this year. I've got 6 students working on it, and 3 faculty, including Tony and Dr. Omega, who's teaching class tonight. Otherwise, he'd be here too, Sharon, we want to make OU Tulsa a more sustainable campus, and we're particularly focused on the landscape of the campus. We've done a lot of planning for like the facilities. And our campus is about 60 acres, and we have 35 acres of natural landscape, mostly irrigated turf grass for the most part. There's 1,500 students, there's 1,000 employees, there's 1,300 parking spaces, there's I don't know how many thousand patient visits a year. Dr. Clancy would shame me for not knowing that, but I don't remember right now. But, you know, our mission as an institution is to educate the community, to improve health, to conduct scientific research, to find out, you know, what's right, and what's wrong, and what's best practices, and that sort of thing. So, you know, we have a great panel here with expertise, and I want food to be a central part of our sustainability plan. So what advice would you give me? What would you say we should do as a campus?
I think you ought to spec out nut and fruit bearing trees and shrubs. And we have a very talented horticulturist at the OSU Extension by the name of Kenda Woodburn. She is replaced Sue Gray, who retired from 30 years, and she was fabulous as well. But Kenda worked on blackberry varieties at the University of Arkansas, and she has been instrumental in DHS and 36th Street. Back behind, they have a huge garden there that they are getting set to plant blackberries there. But they did the plastic culture, and they produced tons of food behind the DHS this summer. And so I think
We
that
did
is.
the tilling.
You did the tilling?
We did the tilling.
We have 24 raised beds at the health department here down north.
And one of the things too,
24 little raised beds.
we suggest that people do a food assessment whenever you start any kind of food project. And First Nations has a really good assessment tool to do that. And it's free, I think it's online.
Would that be at the
First
Nations.
university, when you say assess the university?
Well, if you get this tool guide, it goes through what you do, how you go about doing assessment. I know with all of I do USDA grant reviews. I've done that in the past. And one of the things that we look at too is, was there any assessment done for you, for the project that you're applying for? And what was the findings from the assessment? Was there need for this project? It just kind of spreads out, what the needs, who are the people, and what are their views on this project that you've started. Our organization, we're in the middle of writing a cookbook. It's kind of a cookbook project, and it's on food, faith, and justice around food. And we're using one of the groups we were looking at too as resources. It keeps coming back. First Nation. They have the best assessment tool there is. And I know a lot of the grant reviewers, when they see that come in, and especially if you use First Nation, they put a lot of money in doing that. And so it's a really good way of looking at, what you need to do. Because it may need to do something different, and maybe, like what she's saying, put the berries out, put the trees out, and then, see how that goes. And then look, one of the things I told you was to look for vegetarian and vegan students, that would be part of your assessment, because they're more likely to have a need for that, the growing a vegetable, since you're not going to have chickens probably.
Well, I gotta ease into it, Amanda. If I show up with chickens, I think they really, the first day, they really
We
get
had
it.
a chicken at the library last winter, and these chickens showed up and lived on our grounds for about a week until someone came in to get them away. Downtown? No, at the shoe library.
So it didn't end up in like a chicken finger basket?
No, we don't have any evidence. We were told that it's having a nice life someplace.
I have a question. Would assessing the soil have something to do with those assessments as well, to help them to determine?
If you're going to do any kind of garden project, the first thing you need to do is do soil testing. To see what was there, what's in the soil. And we generally don't use the soil, we just cover it up with cardboard and bring in our soil.
And I think you need to look at the sustainability of it, and who's going to maintain it, who's going to take ownership of it, because I've seen community gardens come and go, and from new to snake in. And if you have just one dynamic leader, that's okay in the beginning, but if that one person does everything, then everyone comes to rely on that one person to be the leader. And then when that person leaves, then we have seen it just crumble.
How do you feel about, we've thought about, we could have a staff person that would be the head gardener or horticulturist. And then we've also thought, well, we could maybe partner up with expertise that's already in the community, and they could come in and work it as a contract. Do you have any opinion, you think, one way or another?
Yeah, I would think that if you partnered with someone like TCC, the community college, because even though their students are going to be leaving every 2 years, there are always those horticultural students that are interested in projects, continual projects, if they could be involved in something like that. I think it would be great. I know when I was president of Monroe PTA in 1991, I think it was, we partnered with TCC with their horticultural, classes, and actually Dr. McKeon, who was my professor at the time, became provost later at the Southeast campus. He, and all that stuff, president, he was the person that I went to and talked to about this project, and we had a very successful project over at Monroe Middle School for the parents, teachers, and students to come together, and were able to work with Upwood Trees as well. We got 2 grants for them, by the way, for the first time in the history of their organization, because we were greedy. But we took students and parents for a presentation, and they really thought it was a great presentation, so we impressed them and got 2 grants through that. Bradford Pear Trees, and then we also did the atrium there in the school. That was what the second grant was for. We had an atrium that had been neglected for years. But TCC, you could probably make that ongoing with them. Because, you need those students to be into your
Right.
organization anyway.
They
into
might
OU.
become OU students.
That's what I'm
later on.
saying. So I think it'd be a great partnership
So that's also
there.
part of the
They could help
sustainability.
sustain that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
For sustainability, I think that would be a great partnership.
So I think that's a good idea, and I've actually thought of Dr. McKeon because he's
He's-
retiring.
Yeah,
And
he's
I
got
thought
that
maybe
background,
he could
too.
retire to us, so.
Yes.
John is retired too, John Carey had TCC, the horticulture.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
he's-
Well,
he's sharp.
Who's
he's
going to
like-
take his place?
he just keeps saying he's retired, but I think he's like close to it, much closer than me. I would say probably another year or so.
I was in Detroit, and they're doing, you hear a lot of negative, but they're doing some incredibly innovative
Oh,
things.
Yeah.
The utility easements are being planted with,
Mhm.
so there's some great models for
Yeah.
how to maintain a sustainable, without I love the concept of community garden, but seems like feast or famine sometimes in terms of volunteers.
Right.
So you might look at some of the models up there, because I think they exist and you can see what they're doing.
Yeah, I could give you some names of some organizations to contact where they're doing it at universities.
Yeah, I was at the Heartland Campus Compact conference that was here a few weeks ago, and I was giving a presentation, and then after that, I went to the plenary session, and there was about 180 people there. I don't know how many different institutions, but the 5-state region, and the chair started asking questions. These are all professionals doing community outreach of some sort. And she, just started asking things. And one of the things she asked was, how many campuses have community gardens or some kind of garden program? Everybody raised their hand. Right?
Wow.
Except,
You.
And then she asked, how many campuses have farmers market or sell produce on campus? Not everybody, but a lot have that too, and so, there's really nothing back at OU that gets people more motivated than when I come back and say,
Competition.
we're so
Yeah.
far
That's
behind.
how I was thinking.
Absolutely.
Come on.
And all these, second tier institutions are ahead of us,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden people kind of, look up and say, maybe he's right.
He's not crazy.
And the health department on the raised beds they're doing out north, they're working with some of the elementary schools, bringing them in, kind of doing an educational component, but also letting them kind of get some of the bugs off the leaves and doing things like that. But they're kind of struggling with that issue, trying to get different employees to sign up to help
Right.
maintain.
And to maintain, because there's one directly behind my house over there at Booker T where Kip is, and they are not being maintained, trust me, I can look directly at them from the back of my yard.
So, depending on if it's just students or if you're going to open it up to the community, because oftentimes those that dwell in apartments are just craving to work in the soil and don't have that space or that yard. And so what other communities are looking at doing is there's what's called CSA's, Community Supported Agriculture, where you can join and buy a share. The farmer grows it, and gives you the week of produce every week. That how can we build urban farming and self-reliance and learn how to grow our own food is to be able to start growing urban farmers. And these members that are purchasing from CSAs but don't have the land, that are living in lofts downtown, would be interested in the land and the space to be able to have them a place that they can start growing food too. And that's how you're going to create and sustain it.
It's a lot of residential, you have a lot of residential.
Yeah, we've already met
It's a lot of
with the Patrick Henry Neighborhood Association,
Oh.
which is our neighborhood association.
Oh, Patrick Henry.
And they were over at the studio. But I see great opportunity. I also think we have to kind of ease into it. Don't want to, the last thing I want to do is do some kind of project that fails right away, and then they, then it's 10 more years before, my successor, gets an opportunity to try it again, but.
Well, and you want to do it in such a way that you would go out there and pick that peach off of that tree and eat it, and is it going to be pretty and heavily contaminated with sprays? Because I noticed at the Philbrook, they had a picture, beautiful, perfect looking vegetable garden that was great for photoing, toxic chemical pool. I mean, they kept the chemicals going
Heavily.
all the time.
That would, I would, at least just speaking for myself, that is not the direction we want to go. And in particular, I think with the focus on health, the health sciences at our campus, we would want to create, healthy food and be able to share it with the patients. And we also have an impact team on campus, which is for mental health, and they're looking for vocational opportunities for some of their patients. And so to get them involved in the process of making the garden and tending the garden. I think we have a lot of people on campus that could be involved in it if there's interest. And I think there is some interest, but we have to figure out how to do it, how to operationalize it, and allay all the fears, the justified fears of the administrators and managers and people that, are used to just paying Terra Vista, I don't know how many thousands to come out and mow the lawn, right? That's all they do right now.
And the water inputs that it
Right.
creates,
Right.
keep that.
So how many million gallons of water do you think the university uses in a year? I know this, I have the records in my briefcase.
About how much?
25 million
Wow.
gallons of water in a year. And a lot of it, goes to irrigation, and, it's just potable water that we're paying for,
Wow.
right? And then we pour it on the grass, and then it runs off, and we have to pay again the
Right.
stormwater fees to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it just makes
Vicious
no
cycle.
sense whatsoever, right? But yet we just keep on doing it. So,
So what you need is
A
yours.
great way to justify those gardens then is to do
Is there
it.
food service on that campus?
so we have a Bill and Roots franchise that is in the main building that has a cafe, you know, and that's about it, really. There's vending machines, which are full of horrible stuff for the most part. You know,
Health
very-
department's working on, you can be deemed a healthy business
Yeah.
now.
Sure.
I know, we
Sure.
had some, workers in the health department the other day after hours, and I happened to be there, and they said, where can I grab a soda? I said, not here. And they said, what? Where's your vending? I said, the vending's down there, but there's no soda pop in there. And they were just
Yes.
appalled. They were like, what do you mean there's no soda pop? I was like, you're gonna have to go Quick Trip on the corner to get that. But yeah, our vending was all been revamped, so.
So if you think of anything else, I mean, you know, I would love to hear more ideas. And I may even send some students to ask for advice if you're game. So, as we develop the project, so.
Well, thank you all.
Yeah.
I think when we were studying this, we figured there were like 32 chairs.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like
So,
25 to 26 people missed out on it.
Once again, Michael, we proved what
like our
terrible
WIC
promoters
classes.
we are,
Yes.
right?
Never hear.
If you never hear us in front of the public relations office.
You know what, it's not one, it's the quality.
Right away.
Okay.
I'm only
You need to come to the back. I'm gonna take you on that. You say this is primary thing.